The engines have fired and the Indy cars are ready to go racing in Toronto. Hello and welcome to Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I'm Paul Page. This is a magnificent international city. Great theater, good restaurants, and of course, IndyCar racing. This is the 7th year of the Indy cars here at Toronto's exhibition place, and it's a very pivotal part of the series for the Indy cars, and so it's appropriate that ABC Sports visits here for the very first time. Now, because of the championship battle, this is always an important race, but the name Toronto will go down in the IndyCar history books for a far more prominent reason. Yesterday, there was a 4.5-hour meeting of the 24-member IndyCar owner board. They've decided to streamline the sport, to get in step with the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. They've added Tony George to their board as a non-voting member, and they've now pared it down to just 5 members. A good, swift, efficient organization that will look to the future of IndyCar racing. And already they're working on rules that will slow the cars down at Indianapolis in the future and make things just a little bit safer for the IndyCar drivers. Now, as to this race here, well, it's a significant event. But most important, perhaps, is the fact that one of the great IndyCar drivers, Rick Mears, is not driving here. He's still trying to rest that right wrist and looking forward to the Michigan 500. And so driving in his place is Paul Tracy, a Canadian. But Sam Posey, there are other Canadians here of consequence as well.
Well, certainly it is Scott Goodyear who, by virtue of his electrifying second place at Indianapolis, who is currently thought of as Canada's best and best-known driver. Plus, once he was thrust into the spotlight, Goodyear proved to be both likable and extremely level-headed. Plus, he is sponsored by a Toronto-based company. But Paul Tracy, by contrast, drives for Roger Penske, an American. And Tracy, only 23 years old, is not yet as well known. However, for those of us who've seen his sheer brilliance at the wheel, for example, the way he shouldered his way past Michael Andretti to take the lead at Detroit, many of us think that it's not long before Canadians start comparing Paul Tracy with the late, great Gilles Villeneuve.
Now, the track here is a temporary street circuit, but it runs through Toronto's exhibition place, right on the edge of the lakeshore. And Bobby Unser, it's a track very much like Long Beach.
Well, Paul, the layout of this track is very similar to Long Beach, which gave us such a good race earlier this year. It's got a mixture of tight and fast turns, long straightaways, and plenty of opportunities for passing. I think we're in for a close race, and especially because the cars that haven't handled well on other tracks may be competitive here. For the driver, the track is rough. It's demanding in places. It's rough. The cement walls are high and very close to the edge of the track. You really feel hemmed in. And it looks like it's going to be hot. A final thought. It's a long race, and towards the end, fuel becomes the factor.
Well, on the edge of Lake Ontario, the field has begun the pace lap already. Let's look at the starting grid. On the pole, it's Bobby Rahal, the current point leader and winner of the '86 Toronto event, alongside Emerson Fittipaldi, who won the Molson Indy Toronto in 1987. In the second row to the inside, Michael Andretti, a two-time winner of this Midsummer Racing Classic. Alongside is Paul Tracy, who is substituting for four-time Indy 500 winner Rick Mears. In the third row to the inside, it's Mario Andretti, a runner-up in last year's race. And Danny Sullivan, 3 times a runner-up here, but never a winner at Toronto. The fourth row to the inside is Raul Boesel, who finished second in last month's race at Detroit. And Scott Pruitt. He has 4th and 6th place finishes in 2 starts on this course. Inside the 5th row is John Andretti. He ran 5th in last year's Molson Indy Toronto. Alongside is Al Unser Jr., the winner here in 1988, again in 1990. Inside the 6th row is Scott Goodyear, the Indy 500 runner-up, performing now before a hometown crowd. Outside is Eddie Cheever, who finished 3rd here 2 years ago in his Toronto debut. Inside row 7, it's Stefan Johansson, who leads the Rookie of the Year points fight after just 2 races. Alongside is Scott Brayton on the threshold of his first IndyCar victory. Inside the 8th row, it's Robbie Gordon making his 4th IndyCar start, and Brian Till, an impressive freshman driver. Inside row 9 is Ted Prappis making his 2nd start through the streets of Toronto. Alongside is Christian Danner making his 2nd career start in the IndyCars. In the 10th row, it's Jimmy Vasser, a rookie who finished 7th on the streets of Long Beach in April, and Buddy Lazier driving one of 2 Buick-powered cars in the field. Inside row 11 is Jan Beekes, making his first start since 1990, driving for A.J. Foyt. And Ross Bentley, the 3rd Canadian in today's field. Inside row 12 is Jeff Wood, a veteran driver out of Wichita, Kansas. Alongside is Vinicio Salmi, Italian driver making his second career start. And alone in the final row is Eric Bachelard, a rookie with a pair of top 10 efforts on street courses. And the rest of the field now streams toward Nick Panaro's green flag. Nick was worried about this start, but he's got it off nice and clean, and the battle begins right at the front of the field with Ray Hall moving to the outside. Rest of the field comes through nice and smooth through the first turn now. It is still Ray Hall trying to challenge Emerson Fittipaldi in the 5 car, but look at Michael Andretti in car number 1 as he comes up and they're 3 wide on Lakeshore.
Well, you can see Ray Hall go right past. Look at that going into the first turn. Michael locked up and brakes. The tie, 2 abreast in that first turn, Paul. That's really something.
Fittipaldi drops back, and Paul Tracy comes up to get around Fittipaldi in the number 4 car. Now he is around Bobby Ray Hall.
This is the most exciting first lap I've ever seen.
What this shows you is how important it is to get the leader, be ahead of the guy.
Already a car in trouble. That's Jimmy Vassar's car.
You can start to say it because it's so hard to pass on a course like this at times. It's really important to get that lead.
3 different leaders through the first half of the first lap. Incredible stuff.
Sam, I don't think we've seen a going into the second turn deal like that in years.
Eddie Cheever battles with John Andretti, while back at the front, Michael Andretti has now picked off the lead and holds it solidly as they come through the first turn for the very first time. Then Paul Tracy, Bobby Ray Hall, Emerson Fittipaldi, Mario Andretti, and Danny Sullivan.
Remember, this is a must-win situation for Michael Andretti. He has to try to beat Bobby Ray Hall in this race if he's going to have any chance to overhaul him in the championship.
And he's also been having the best year of his career.
Mario Andretti works at the back of Emerson Fittipaldi as they battle for position. Michael Andretti has now led the first lap 7 straight races in a row. He is on a charge. He came into this event last year trailing Bobby Ray Hall by 31 points. Today he trails by 39, but that gives you an idea that Michael can still move up and score a championship win.
You know, and I started to mention earlier about right there's Emerson Fittipaldi. That's the new Chevrolet small engine, the V engine, versus Ray Hall, who has the A engine. The A engine, Paul, actually outran the V engine at the start.
Battle for 4th place, Emerson Fittipaldi and the Ford-powered machine of Mario Andretti. Again, you can tell the difference between Mario and Michael's car. Mario has a red number on the front and a red rollover bar, while Michael's carries that solid black number 1 on the front of his car.
Mario had a bad weekend at Loudon, New Hampshire 2 weeks ago. He was involved in a couple of incidents, but he came back here and he's gotten his morale back. Possibly this Toronto is a city of 400,000 Italians live here, the biggest population of Italians anywhere outside of Italian cities themselves. Maybe that's given him a burst of confidence.
On board now with Scott Goodyear, the young Canadian with that tremendous second-place finish at the Indianapolis 500. Though he's been struggling here a little bit, and he, of course, is in front of a hometown crowd, so it's very important for him. Now Scott Pruitt has a problem as he appears to be dragging something off the left side of the car, and yet another car in trouble. That's the 42 car, Vinicio Salmi. So several cars with trouble. It looked like Jimmy Vassar was able to get underway. The course marshals go to the help. Look at the front of Scott Pruitt's car. He's been in serious involvement with something.
Well, they obviously had a confrontation there.
This may give us a clue to at least part of it.
I don't think this involves Pruitt here. There's Salmi's spin. Jeff Wood getting around him neatly. Very confined there. You see how narrow the track is in places.
Look at the left front of Salmi's car. It was bent. And I don't know, he hit something, and that caused him to spin right there. And this is that real sharp turn at the end of the straightaway that's a long ways around the right, not 120 degrees.
Very precarious position there, and this echoes what you said at the start of the run, Bobby. It's that it's so narrow here, like most temporary circuits, that you can't afford a mistake of a fraction of an inch.
No, they really can't. And if you get to blocking the track, you just got to block everybody. That makes it hard.
Yeah, and if you think about the driver's point of view, remember his eyes, you can see there below the level of those concrete walls. So you really are driving through a canyon.
All right, let's go to the pits. Gary Gerald.
We were going to talk about the concerns of the race course at Toronto. Here's visual evidence. The front end damaged heavily on Scott Pruitt's True Sports Budweiser car. The concerns are fuel and the concrete. As Bobby indicated at the top of the show, surrounded by concrete. There's just not room for forgiveness if you make a mistake. Concentration has to be complete. If you make a bit of a mistake, you can pay a heavy price. Scott Pruitt has just found that out. Let's go to Jack.
Gary, that fuel concern is a complex issue here at a track like Toronto. Now, you can, and if you want to win, you want to try and make this race in 2 stops. But because of the nature of the race being about 100 plus laps, you've got a very narrow fuel window. You've got to come in between lap 32 and lap 35 to be able to do it in 2 stops. This all changes if you have about 3 laps of full course yellow. That's happened in the past. But the difference between winning and losing can still be what's left in the tank near the end of the race. And that's only about 4 gallons. Most drivers want to take it all on, and they want to do it in 2 stops. Only time will tell.
And of course, Jack, the distance of the track at 1.78 miles around means that you can't miss that stop at all. Michael Andretti is leading here in Toronto. Up at the Molson Indy Toronto, Michael Andretti leads. Paul Tracy, as you see there, is an even second behind Michael. And then Bobby Rahal is 2.3 seconds behind Michael. Emerson Fittipaldi, 4.7, and Mario Andretti, 6.7 seconds back. Those intervals on a road course are almost meaningless in terms of being able to make up the distance. All this man, Michael Andretti, would have to do is falter for a second. And you can see Paul Tracy in the number 4 car, the car normally driven by Rick Mears, would be all over, around, and ahead of him.
And remember, it was exactly this scenario we saw at Detroit a few weeks ago, where Michael Andretti was leading and Paul Tracy suddenly muscled his way by. Michael is obviously thinking of that now, and here he comes.
Here comes Paul Tracy making a move on Michael. Bobby Rahal watching from 3rd place. Michael Andretti has the best line in this corner. They should stay static for a turn or 2, but Paul Tracy is anxious to get the lead. Look at him trying to move inside.
Well, he's pressured Michael hard. And when he went into that number 2 turn down there, number 3 turn, there just isn't any way to really pass the guy on the outside. So Michael probably didn't even believe that Paul Tracy would be trying that, except Paul is new, and he's the most aggressive driver on the track right now.
Yeah, and the reason I compared him with the great Canadian driver Gilles Villeneuve is he's very physical. He gets his car right inside another car and forces you out of the way.
So Michael Andretti still is the leader, but we've been watching this marvelous attempt by Paul Tracy to catch up and get alongside and get around. You see Bobby Rahal from time to time closing in from 3rd place. I think for the moment, Bobby Unser, that Rahal is just content to watch this battle. I don't think he wants part of it.
No, absolutely not. He's letting Paul Tracy do a so-called dirty work. Rahal, out of that group right there, is without doubt the smartest one as far as winning and finishing races in the long run. While Michael has been the hard charger and the fast guy all year, Paul Tracy at Detroit was without doubt the fastest car or fastest driver in the same car for Roger Penske there.
Well, Bobby, you mentioned Detroit. We're looking at exactly the same situation we saw there, except it's sunny here and not overcast. And remember, it was Bobby Rahal who shadowed Tracy and Michael Andretti there and wound up winning that race.
You know, there is, in fact, a wonderful comparison here when you think about it. Here is Bobby Rahal running in 3rd place here, way up in the points. In fact, there's no way that he can lose the lead here. Oh, and we've got a car. There's the number 19 machine. That's Eric Bachelard, the great ARS champion, into the tire barrier and head down. The medical crew is right there. They want to make sure he's all right.
This is uncharacteristic. Usually when you go into the tire barriers, you come out smiling. He seems to have been hurt.
In spite of how bad that wreck looks, it would have been 20 times that bad at least if it hadn't been for those tires. That's probably the nicest invention. Look at the webbing that they hold the tires together with. It's almost like running into a balloon.
Twin yellow flags at the start-finish line tell the drivers that there is a yellow all the way around. They'll send Johnny Rutherford in the pace car out. There he is, and slow the field down with Michael Andretti in front. Now, we've had another driver in problems early. That's Scott Pruitt, and he's with Gary Gerald.
Well, a moment ago, we saw the nose of the car and the damage that was made to the Budweiser team. Scott Pruitt talking with the crew. Scott, what was the problem and what happened?
Well, Little Al and I were racing pretty hard, and Danny was in front of us. We went off the end of the straight, came up to the next turn, and he just got in real deep and drove in the side of me. I was real surprised that he made a move like that, and unfortunately put us out of the race.
And coming off your best finish of the season 2 weeks ago up in New Hampshire, it's a doubly bitter disappointment.
It certainly is. Everybody on the Budweiser True Sports team has been working so hard, and you know we had a lot of ground to make up in front of us, and we're making ground. A lot of things have changed here with the team, and we're trying to get through all that and have something like this. I mean, it's uncalled for.
Well, we're glad to see that you're okay, and we look forward to better fortune in 2 weeks in Michigan.
Thank you.
Scott.
Some strong words aimed at Al Unser Jr., and perhaps we can get an indication of what happened. Now, that's an entirely different situation. That's, of course, the accident with Bachelor as he got into the barrier.
Well, Eric Bachelor obviously slid into the barrier because you could see his left rear was completely loose from the car. He had no control over the car. The fact is he hit something back a ways, either a car or the wall, slid down a long ways, and the tires, in spite of everything, really saved a lot of damage there.
I think if he's hurt at all, it's because he went in sideways at a bad angle there for him.
So everybody lined up now behind the PPG pace car. Johnny Rutherford at the wheel. He, by the way, is still talking about a possibility of a ride next year. We're taking you back now to the first lap of the race. Because it was a marvelous run.
Here's where Ray Hall was leading with Michael trying to outbrake him. It almost looks like he got touched from behind. You see both Paul Tracy and Emerson Fittipaldi very much in contention for the lead. I mean, this is incredible stuff. The road is not wide enough for this.
No, but you can just see how those two drivers, Michael and Ray Hall, Michael on the left, Ray Hall on the right, really gave each other some racing room. And they blocked the track. Nobody else could pass them. They were gentlemen to each other because both of them realized if you crash the first lap, you're finished.
So Scott Goodyear wheels around the track. We watch from his onboard camera with Michael Andretti at the front of the field. And 10 laps of the 103 laps already completed. We are under yellow. Pace car, while we are still under a full course caution due to Eric Bachelor's accident, he's climbed out of the car and is doing fine. We mentioned at the start of the show the situation where everybody seems to be getting together in the Indy cars now. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway combined up with the board of the IndyCar group in general. And earlier, Jack Harut was able to talk with Bill Stokan and Tony George about this very situation.
It has the potential of allowing the growth of this sport to increase tremendously.
I think that it's a first step in finding the continuity between the series and the Indianapolis 500 that's maybe been lacking.
It's nice to see the whole thing come back together, and now maybe they'll look further down the road than immediate results, and especially be looking even further and further to the safety of these IndyCar drivers.
Good to see those two guys just sitting together, frankly. They've been separated by thought and physical distance over the last few months.
Well, Sam, there was going to be a war. That was obvious. And now it's peace instead of a war. And IndyCar racing needs that. Good announcement.
Michael Andretti anticipating a green flag, perhaps at the conclusion of this lap, though the yellow flashing light still on the pace car. Let's go back and take a look at the start of this race, which was spectacular from Michael Andretti's point of view. There's Fittipaldi off to the right, Ray Hall in front, and Michael looking for room. Now they're on Lakeshore Boulevard, long run, and then suddenly they have to break down for a right-hand turn. Watch the placement of Ray Hall's car.
Watch Michael Andretti's. Watch, here's Ray Hall's wing. Look how close he came under the back of Michael's tire, and look at Michael's right front tire locking up going into there. He's got a little bit too much front brake balance. Boy, what a close deal that was.
You think that isn't a display of great driving on both men's parts? I mean, those cars are traveling at incredible velocities, and yet they're able to maneuver just inches away. Now Nick Finoro tells the entire field as they come around that there is one lap to go back to the green. Now, there apparently might be some concern about that start. Jack Harut has an update.
Well, Paul, you're right on the money. Carl Hogan here and the rest of the crew for Bobby Rahal's team are none too happy about the start of this race.
No, I thought the pole setter got to set the pace, and Bobby was getting ready, and Emerson jumped him, which I don't blame Emerson, but I blame the starter for dropping the green flag. And the first lap, Michael hits us in the back in the gearbox, so it wasn't what we'd call a real great start, Jack.
Any problems, though, from that altercation when he slams you in the gearbox like that? Has Bobby said anything?
No, the car's handling well. Everything's fine. It's just that we want to talk to the IndyCar officials after the race.
We see more and more of that type of a problem, though, especially in the last couple of races. Everybody's getting a little over-anxious at the drop.
Well, you know, I think that's true, but I think, you know, you can't blame them for trying. We'd do the same thing, but it's up to the starter to drop the green flag at the proper time, and I just don't think it was done today.
Paul?
Well, one thing to consider, every year I've been here, the starter, Nick Finoro, is concerned about the start because he doesn't have a good view of the field coming toward him. And every year he says, boy, I just hope I do this right because I don't get to see them very much before I actually have to give them a green flag. On board with Danny Sullivan, great view of his car. There's over Scott Goodyear's right shoulder, one of our onboard cameras.
Sullivan had moved up to 6th place. He's moved up more than any other car in the race to this point.
And Michael Andretti, of course, at the front of the order as they're coming back to green. The pace car comes into the pits. Michael Andretti leads them down. Paul Tracy in second. Bobby Rahal sits in 3rd place. And there comes the green flag. That's the very quick view that Nick gets of the start as well. So he doesn't have a lot of time to anticipate. Coming fairly single file back to the green flag, Bobby.
Let me just make a little point there. Michael leading the race. Paul Tracy second, Rahal third. If Rahal was behind Michael kind of have an idea what he's going to do. With Tracy, he knows that kid is going to push hard. Tracy won't let up, and if he can pass, he'll go for it in spite of how the finish might come out.
Some compression there under braking into the first corner. Second corner actually off of Lakeshore as the rest of the field comes through again, staying single file. Nobody looking for maneuvering room at the moment.
Look at how aggressive Rahal is. At this point in the championship last year, he also had a commanding lead. Not quite as big a lead as he has right now, and he decided to play it cautious. Meantime, Michael Andretti caught him race by race by race, and Rahal wound up not winning the championship. This year, a completely different guy, anxious to learn from the mistake of last year and be aggressive all through this year. We certainly saw it on that first lap.
Michael Andretti, Ford Cosworth Power now begins to inch away from Paul Tracy, and Bobby Rahal continues to try to work the front two, while Mario Andretti is trying to battle with Emerson Fittipaldi as well. Let's give you the order, the top 10. Michael Andretti, Paul Tracy, Bobby Rahal, then Fittipaldi, then Mario Andretti, then Danny Sullivan with a spectacular run. His teammate, Al Unser Jr., is just behind. Then Raul Boisel, Eddie Cheever, John Andretti, Stefan Johansson, Scott Goodyear, and Scott Brayton. And look at Mario as he's feeling very racy with Fittipaldi today.
Boy, he is. He's all over Fittipaldi. In fact, they've been racing since the start like this. Tooth and toenail all the way.
You know, I saw Mario as he was standing waiting for the start of this race, went up to see how he was feeling. Remember, he has those injuries to his feet suffered in the Indianapolis 500. And I looked down at his driving shoes, and he has little openings cut out to let his toes kind of poke through. Still has his fireproof Nomex sock on under that, so he's safe. But he's got the whole front end of the shoe cut off to try and relieve some of the pressure on those still swollen toes.
Mario is... He's been driving for so long, and he's the tough one. He'll just work around those problems. If he's got sore feet, he'll make them feel good. It will not affect his racing, and he looks like he's racy today.
This is one of the few courses on which Mario has never scored a victory. He was second here behind his son last year, but he has not managed to win one of these.
There gives you an idea of that long straightaway run as Michael Andretti takes the turn in, and then suddenly it's very short, very tight. And the concrete walls on both sides, you can take no chances here, and yet Michael seems to be able to gauge them perfectly.
Yeah, that's about a 120-degree corner. You know, you get into it off of 170 miles an hour straightaway, 175, and then you just keep going around. But it's a nice turn, Paul.
Well, Bobby, you compared it earlier with the track at Long Beach, and it's certainly giving us that same kind of really close racing where there's a chance to pass because there is a long straightaway and you can outbrake somebody at the end of it. It's a neat course.
Got a quick view of Danny Sullivan in the Molson car there. Remember, that's the Galmor, the car that he performed so well with at Long Beach, and it's working pretty well. We're on board with Danny right now. You can see that battle just ahead, and here this car is working fairly well.
And you know, his sponsor of this car is the sponsor of the race. So, in other words, there's a particular urgency for him to succeed here. Posters with this car on it are all over town.
Well, I think it's obvious that this circuit, as we said earlier, is very similar to Long Beach because you see Danny running better in this race than where he is right now. In other words, early in the race than he has in any other race so far this season, with the exception of Long Beach, and he won that one.
And Little Al is lined up right behind him. Danny Sullivan right now running in 6th place and trying to catch up to Mario Andretti, while just ahead Andretti is trying to catch up to Emerson Fittipaldi, while Mario's son Michael, showing the dominance that he's shown so often this season, continues to run in the front of the field.
I was talking to Danny Sullivan's crew this morning saying, hey, what did you guys do to make that thing like a second quicker just all of a sudden? And they told me all they did to show you how competitive close these cars are, they made a little change to the ramp on the limited slip of the rear end, made 1 full second difference. And they did that to Little Al's car, so you can see Little Al is right behind Danny trying to pass him.
The question, Bobby Unser, you brought it up at the start of the show. We've discussed it some, is fuel. I wonder what that long yellow will do. Gary Gerald, do you have any idea?
Paul, indeed we do. We know that in the Penske camp, both Fittipaldi and Tracy were running at what they call the 7 o'clock position regarding fuel relationship or fuel adjustment, which is on the conservative side. They figured if they got 5 laps of yellow, that might take away any concerns about fuel in this race. Well, they're very close to that after those earlier incidents. So now we know that the fuel window has been pushed forward. We think they'll stop on lap 40 now as opposed to lap 35 earlier. It may do away with any of the fuel concerns that Jack was talking about early in the show.
Love it when it does that. Leaves it to racing on the racetrack. So it's still Michael Andretti out in front with Paul Tracy trying to catch up on a beautiful day. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC stations. He is still out in front. Paul Tracy's right behind him, putting the pressure on now. Bobby Rahal is lined up there as well, followed by Emerson Fittipaldi and Mario Andretti. The top 5, for the most part, closely grouped on this circuit as they wind their way through the side of the Canadian National Exhibition place in Toronto. Moving on to the front part of the course along the pit straight. After back-to-back wins at Portland and Milwaukee, then to finish second to points and rival Bobby Rahal at New Hampshire, we asked Michael Andretti about his team's momentum.
I think we're still there. I think the biggest thing now is finishing, and if you can finish in the top 2 of the rest of the races, you can still win this championship. So I think it was still a positive thing, even though Bobby did win. We just try to win some more. We gave a lot out at the beginning of the year, and we have to try to make it up like we did last year.
As we've watched Michael there, just notice how physical this is. I mean, these men really work for their living. Remember, the heart rate is about triple what it would be resting. Just notice he's coming through a particularly rough part of the track right here. He has to really fight the car over the bumps at very high speeds. A lot of work.
Of course, remember, as we mentioned earlier, Michael Andretti at this point in the season was about the same number of points behind Bobby Rahal. And, of course, as the number 1 on his car indicates, he came out of last season with the national championship. Look at Paul Tracy. Paul Tracy looking for racing room to the left of Michael Andretti. He searches to the outside. Now, this is a braking maneuver down to a right-hand corner. Rahal's right there watching as well. Tracy tries to stay on the outside, is forced back, and, boy, that wall to the left comes up very quickly.
Boy, there's no way to make it on the outside. If you don't have a really big edge, you can't do it. Michael knew that, but I'm proud of Michael. He really has a little racing room.
Look at Danny there. Danny lost the back end, and his teammate, Little Al, who's been on his rear end for the past couple of laps, is right there as well. Danny just slapped the door shut on him.
Yes, he did. Well, there's nothing you can do right into there. It's all S-turn, just back and forth. But Little Al's favorite place to pass is going into that number 3 turn at the end of the long straightaway. And he almost got Danny, but he stuck it out before they collided. Then he tried to get him back, but Danny had nothing to do. No place to go except head for the wall.
And you see right ahead of Danny on the track is Mario. You may just catch sight of him in that white car up there. So Danny thinks he can catch Mario. He has been catching him, and he doesn't want to cede the place to Little Al first.
There you see the computer-generated stats on Danny Sullivan. Marvelous electronic system that they have now in the Indy cars, where transponders on the cars talk to antennas in the pavement, and computers sort all that out through the EDS computer system, and now we can have wonderful information like that.
A lot of speculation that Little Al, you see now again pulling out outside.
There's a good maneuver. Little Al locks him. Little Al locks the brakes, gets past Danny Sullivan. Boy, that's a real bonsai maneuver there. I'm surprised he tried it with a teammate.
All right, now there's talk that he may go, Little Al may go to Formula One next year. Remember, Danny has put in a year in Formula One years ago for Terrell. It's that kind of maneuver and pulling it off that is commonplace in Formula One, and boy, could he do it. Here's Boesel coasting to a stop.
Raul Boesel apparently got involved with Brian Till, is what the situation was. Till back under power. Now will Raul get going? That car, of course, is a new number from what you've seen in the past. He's been driving the 11 car, which is the number normally carried by Hiro Matsushita, who's intended to drive at this race, but he got out in practice, and his leg from his accident in Indianapolis still hurts him terribly, especially, he told me, when he tries to heel and toe. And so he said, I'm going to wait just a little bit longer.
Well, I think it's a function of this track in particular that it was so rough here for him.
This is a point in the race when the track is slippery. As you watch a lot of the cars, watch your rear end, you watch Little Al trying to outbrake. Here's Little Al coming in there trying to pass Danny. Now watch his tires. He's braking as hard as he can, but right about here, see the rear tires just lock up a little bit. the track is slippery, so the car loses a little adhesion. Now, most of the cars in the race right now are having this. The track will get better a little bit later as the oil gets a chance to soak in.
Boy, what a delicate piece of balancing there. You just get a glimpse of the 14 car, A.J. Foyt's car. Jan Beekes is the driver at the current time in that machine. Now, you saw Raul Boisel running off the course. Gary Gerald, can you update that for us?
Indeed we can, Paul. Boy, somebody on the rev limiters, they just go flying by us on the pit straight here. Sorry to be distracted momentarily. Thought it was an engine going away. Boisel, gearbox problems. That's why he came to a stop. He reported a vibration, turned out to be gearbox.
Now, gearboxes suffer from a course that's rough at all, and this one, you can see all the different changes in elevation, changes in pavement surface as well, from asphalt to concrete and back, as we watch Roger Penske, who is on the two-way radio, to his driver for this race, Paul Tracy. I think all of us are very concerned. We miss Rick Mears here and hope he is back soon.
Well, I think you're going to find that Paul Tracy was a super pick for Roger Penske. That boy has been right there in the red and white Marlboro number 4. It's been extremely fast in Roger Penske's cars on the road circuit. And Roger, I had a talk with him the other day. He said, hey, I'm going to stick with this kid. We're going to make a good race driver out of him because he is quick.
Interesting, though, that Tracy, after that bid to take the lead off Michael Andretti, has now dropped back a little and is having to regroup. He's got Rahal right on his tail.
Sam, that comes about because Penske is talking to him. You can see Roger talking to him. Roger saying, hey, don't try to win the race right now. Be smart like Rahal. Lay back when it's important to do so. Go for it when you have a chance.
Yeah, Paul told me the other day that he was trying to give some input as to the handling of the car via the radio, and Roger said, don't talk. Just say, yes, I've heard your message, or no, I have not heard your message.
Yes, no, or 10-4.
Then Stefan Johansson into the pits. This is the 32nd lap, so that would have been the original plan time, but consider the yellow flag. They all say they'll go a little bit later, but Johansson is in now early. We'll be back with more from Toronto.
So,
in the pits, Gary Gerald's right there.
Paul, he came in earlier than expected. We had just gotten a 3-lap indication. He came in. The engine is quiet. They're peeling off the bodywork. And the young Canadian driver sits helplessly in the cockpit. In the crowd, you can audibly hear them groaning and moaning in their concern after the terrific race that he was running. We don't know what the problem is. It may be gearbox related. They're trying to move him up now. They're trying to get him into position. The bodywork is off. Now they go to work back around the gearbox. We can only assume that maybe something jammed back there. We'll try to find out more, obviously.
Roger Penske oversees the operation. That's Richard Buck, the chief mechanic on the car, over the cockpit there. They're all on the same two-way communications. In fact, they have a very sophisticated communications network within the Penske team. So while they are doing this kind of work, they can all communicate with one another. And Bobby, they're at the back of the engine.
Yeah, sir. Well, that's where the gearbox is. The gearbox is right in the back, and that's what he's got problems with. That's what they're looking at and working around. You know, the thing about it is, with this team, this has been their chance to be competitive on road circuits again. It's been a long time before they've really been competitive on real good road circuits or street circuits. Like at Long Beach, they always have problems. So this is really going to hurt Roger Penske a lot.
Something to consider about Paul Tracy. Penske cars have led 35 laps this year. Paul Tracy, essentially their test driver, has led 19 of those. You just got a glimpse of Michael. Now you watch Bobby Rahal, who assumed second place when Paul Tracy went into the pits and has some distance to make up on Michael. So now we have the same situation that we've been watching in the Indy cars most of the year. That's confrontation between Michael and Bobby Rahal.
Yeah, and it also shows you again how Rahal is so much smarter than some of the drivers. He's really matured. He's aggressive this year, but he's mature. He's like he's really smart. He knows when to ease up, and yet he knows when to go for it.
He met his wife, Debbie, at a track very near this up in Mossport years ago, and it was love at first sight. They decided to get married that November, which is only a few months away after they'd known each other only a couple of days.
You know, Sam, that was the first IndyCar race I ever won in my life. It was Mossport, Canada. What a nice racetrack that was in those days.
And it was the first IndyCar race ever held in Canada.
With Michael Andretti at the front of the field. Now, consider the laps led this season. Look, Michael Andretti, who is not in the points lead, he's 39 points back, has led 619 coming into this race. Bobby Rahal second, 377, just over half of that. But the difference, of course, is that Bobby Rahal is leading at the finish, and that takes you back to the old idiom, Sam, of racing. It's got to be running when the checkered flag comes out.
And also remember, that includes Indianapolis, of which Michael totally dominated Indianapolis, too.
So Michael Andretti out in front. His fastest lap, you see it there, 107 miles an hour. Average speed of the race is down at 88 because of that long yellow. The record speed of the race at 99.1. They're inching back up toward it, and once they got moving again, the pace again has been furious.
You see the distance from Bobby Rahal in second back to Emerson Fittipaldi in third. Emerson, of course, being overshadowed by his much younger teammate, Paul Tracy, about half Emerson Fittipaldi's age. But now the old canny Emerson running in third is picking up a lot of points.
Stefan Johansson back into the fight as Mario Andretti just moved around him. Not a battle for position. Again at the top of the field to give you the order, it's Michael Andretti, Bobby Rahal, then third place Emerson Fittipaldi, then that car, Mario Andretti, car number 2. Right behind him, Al Unser Jr., then Danny Sullivan, then Eddie Cheever, John Andretti, Scott Goodyear, Scott Brayton, and Brian Till with a marvelous race going, despite the fact that he got himself sideways on the course a little bit earlier. You caught just a glimpse of that.
Brian Till driving the same True Sports car that Scott Pruitt drove to 4th place here last year, and Till missed qualifying at the same speed that Scott did last year by just 1/10 of a second. So I think Brian Till is a guy we're going to see a lot from.
So it's Ford Cosworth power in this car as well as in Michael's car. An engine that once it won its first race, which it did in the run at Portland, has proven to be definitely a factor to contend with. Remember the dominance, too, at the Indianapolis 500 for that Ford Cosworth.
You can see there's Mario right there, and right behind is little Al creeping up. We're going to see a race developing right here, a real hard passing attempt before too long.
Yeah, you know, you mentioned the excellence of the Ford Cosworth engine as we look at Mario Andretti. The next highest placed Ford Cosworth is Eddie Cheever back in 7th. So it's not just the engine, it's the team.
Well, you can sure see that sometimes because you see Michael and Mario Andretti both have identical cars with identical engines, but young Michael is obviously the fastest.
Ford has announced that they will have more cars carrying their engine next year, but they have not yet announced who those cars might be. And Chevrolet is saying very much the same as we watch Scott Goodyear. Bobby, they're telling people that you can get that basic Ford A engine that everybody wanted so badly last year with no problem at all now.
Well, here's Scott Goodyear right here, driving for the McKinsey people right here. That's an all-Canadian team. McKinsey Financial here in Toronto. They are one of the teams that's really talking to Ford right now.
Well, and of course, they are now the focus of the Canadian fans now that Paul Tracy is out. McKinsey, of course, a mutual fund organization, and their man, Scott Goodyear, he has really blossomed in the public eye since his success at Indianapolis. He is fun to talk to. He's got a very good head on his shoulders, very practical approach to the future of IndyCar racing. I imagine he, along with many of the other drivers, very happy with the new accord between CART and Indy.
Emerson Fittipaldi in the pits. This should be a routine stop. These stops coming on lap 39. And you saw that they were laid out and waiting for Bobby Rahal as well. You also can see that they are continuing their work on Paul Tracy's car. So here goes Emerson Fittipaldi back into the fight. Michael Andretti continues as the leader. Danny Sullivan in the pits. He came in the pits in 6th position. And the Gallus Craco crew going to work on that car.
They're having a slow stop.
I'll tell you what, that team, though, they practice stops. They are so good at it. When it comes slowly, it's something to kind of worry about. You wonder why they might have kept the car in just a little bit longer.
Yeah, without doubt, the Gallus crew has been one of the fastest and best crews. There's Michael in right now.
Michael Andretti is in. Jack Arut's right there.
Paul, interestingly enough, but not surprisingly, Ed Nathman reports they are going to make no changes to the handling capacities of this car. Michael has talked very little on the radio, and he feels that the car is running the way he'd like it. Conversely, his teammate and his father is going to take on one turn up on the wing.
Whoa! Michael Andretti almost got the side in of Bobby Rahal as they came out of the pits. Now, let's think back a few years at this very event, how they look at Carl Hogan. He's not happy with that at all. Several years ago, they absolutely mandated that if you got 2 wheels over that yellow line, you were coming in for a stop-and-go penalty. In fact, that made the difference in one of the races here.
Yeah,
let's
watch
take a look at this.
Here comes Michael on the right of the screen as Bobby Rahal pulls out.
Well, Michael didn't have a whole lot of choice for where he was going to go.
No.
He was forced over that line unless he wanted to just lock the brakes up, and that might have been a more unsafe maneuver.
In my opinion, that was an unpreventable thing. Definitely not Michael's fault. Ray Hall couldn't see it because it's a blind spot on his car. It narrows down. The gate is too narrow to be anything else right there, so there can't be a problem.
Boy,
This was an almost unfortunate.
Yeah, you can see that Ray Hall's team, though, does not share our views here. They were down right next to it and had a different perspective.
But Sam, they don't see it as well as we do on TV. I guarantee you the TV is better.
I agree with you.
Well, it had to look very scary from their ground level point of view. Now, this is Michael as he came out. Here comes Ray Hall. Michael goes down, grabs a gear. I don't think he really expected Ray Hall to come out there. I think he thought Ray Hall would see him because that was an evasive maneuver.
No, there's nothing Michael could do about that. He was a victim.
But you notice, though, Michael never hesitated. I mean, that's the instinct of a champion. He just kept going and went right through that hole.
Nice and calm for Michael Andretti. Not so calm in Bobby Ray Hall's pits. Let's go there with Gary Gerald.
All right, Paul, here's Carl Hogan, who's gesturing across to a cart official again, Billy Camphausen. What's your contention here, Carl?
We had the line going out, and Michael went out. He went across the yellow line on the track. He didn't follow the line out that you're supposed to out of the pit lane. I'm tired of him.
Now, that's 2 times today. You were unhappy with the start as well?
I am unhappy.
All right. Is there any recourse, Carl, for a protest at this point, or is that something you think about?
We're going to talk afterwards to Wally about the start, and now we're talking over there and see what they come up with because they saw it happen.
All right, thank you. Carl Hogan, obviously very angry. 14.16 seconds on the stop. The only change they made was tire pressure, Paul.
Well, you get a look at the replay again. Evasive action only by Michael. Race control, for the time being at least, has said that it was a valid maneuver across the way and there would be no penalty. But that's not going to satisfy Carl Hogan. He is very unhappy with that situation. Michael Andretti, as a result of this stop and that maneuver, maintains the lead over second place Bobby Ray Hall. 42 laps are now complete of the 103 lap scheduled distance. Danny Sullivan, who currently rides in 6th place. The leader of the race is still Michael Andretti, still being pursued by Bobby Ray Hall. You got a good idea at that bump how rough this track can be on the drivers and the cars.
Well, you know, those turns that we just went by with Danny Sullivan right there, the fastest turns on the track, it's kind of like speeds in the turns that equal to Milwaukee, Paul. So the cars really show a lot of steering wheel feedback there.
Danny Sullivan chases Mario Andretti ahead. Eddie Cheever closing from behind. Emerson Fittipaldi is third. Allenser Jr. rides in 4th. We watch them circle this track. Danny reaches down, grabs another gear. You might think that all the drivers on this track shift alike. But Gary Gerald took a look a little bit closer at some of the fancy footwork that goes on in the cockpit of an Indy car.
Approximately 20 times a lap here at Toronto, a driver engages the gearbox to shift the engine on his Indy car. Raul Boesel is graciously in the cockpit of his car here to show us the footwork because 2 distinctively different techniques are utilized in road racing. Now, keep in mind that the position of the pedals is just like in your passenger car with a manual transmission. Throttle or accelerator on the right, brake in the middle, the clutch is on the left. Raul is a classic road racer. He utilizes the clutch every time he engages the gearbox. Keep an eye now as he goes up through the gears. Left foot hits the clutch, right foot on the throttle. 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th gear. Now as he comes down through the gears, he still uses the clutch, foot on the brake, and he hits the throttle with the side of his foot. Now, contrary to popular belief, you can also shift these cars without utilizing the clutch. And there are some drivers who utilize that technique. As they go up through the gearbox, they blip the throttle. They come off of it. That's when they engage a gear. As he comes down through the gearbox, the left foot does the braking. The right foot runs the revs up because you must match the engine revolution with the speed of the gearbox. Now, Raul is giving us a good demonstration of just how that's done, but if you miss one of those gears, you pay a heavy price. Over rev, you damage the engine. You can also damage the gearbox if you miss the shift, and if you don't get the revs up when you're downshifting and you grab a gear, you can lock up the rear end, spin out, take yourself out of the race. Keep in mind, Raul is going to do this more than 2,000 times during the course of this race.
And of course, despite all of that care that Raul took with the gearbox, that's what failed him and put him out early on in this run.
And ironically, that wouldn't have anything to do with it normally. And when you shift without using the clutch, that's more the modern way. And the guys that were brought up in oval track racing do that an awful lot because they're used to braking with their left foot. In fact, for many years, it was one of the biggest secrets that drivers had to road race with.
Scott Brayton continues to work, or Scott Goodyear continues to work through traffic. He currently runs in 9th place. The leader of the race, Michael Andretti, is closing up behind him because there are only 9 cars running on the leader lap now as we approach the halfway point. So, Jack Arute, what about fuel? Will there be enough with that long yellow?
Well, Paul, you see the telemetry behind me for Michael Andretti. Well, they've been working it overtime, and what they've determined is those caution laps that were run under full course caution have given them enough fuel conservation to go the distance in only 2 stops. So that's the plan here for Ed Nathman and his crew for Michael Andretti.
Remember, you know, sometimes the Ford and the Chevrolets get different mileages. The Ford, which is Michael Andretti's engine, gets better mileage from what we've been hearing from the Chevrolets. For example, there's Bobby Rahal right there in 2nd place. His mileage shouldn't be quite as good as Michael's. He's got the Chevrolet A engine.
Bobby Rahal still in hot pursuit of Michael Andretti, who is 2 seconds ahead. Robbie Gordon, you got a view of him there as he moved over and let Bobby Rahal come through, and there you get a good idea of the interval. Number 1 car, Michael Andretti. That 47 car is Jimmy Vasser, not in the front-end contest. And then Bobby Rahal in his beautiful black and gold machine. Now, what about Paul Tracy? He was in the pits. They sent him back out again. And Gary Gerald, now they've made a decision on him?
Indeed, Paul. He was in the pits for a long time. The car was jammed in 2nd gear, a linkage problem apparently. They got it, they thought, fixed for a moment, got him on course, then brought him back in. They took the car deep into the garage area. At the moment, he's unavailable for any interviews. They're just letting everybody, I think, deal with this acute disappointment. But Tracy has showed again that he can run with the big boys in the IndyCar ranks.
Now, Michael Andretti continues his lead here. 9 cars, as we suggested, on the lead lap. Bobby Rahal chasing him. Emerson Fittipaldi in 3rd. Then Al Unser Jr., Mario Andretti, Danny Sullivan, Eddie Cheever, and Scott Goodyear all running on the lead lap together.
Michael is just loving this being out in front because he's able to use all the track, pass at will, have Rahal back just far enough where he can't keep taking a swing and trying to pass him. Michael's race right now.
After 50 laps here at the Molson Indy, Michael Andretti led all the way. Can he go all the way to the finish out in front? 3 times in his racing career, he has led wire to wire. 1991, Laguna Seca, Toronto in 91, and Detroit in 90. These are the cars out of the race. Scott Pruitt, you remember that contact with Al Unser Jr. Ted Rappas had an engine go. Raul Boycell with a gearbox. It was a crash for Eric Bachelard and a gearbox problem for Paul Tracy.
You know, Paul, this is one of Carl Haas's cars, what we call the big buck team, guys with a lot of money. Just so you wonder, why doesn't Michael break transmissions as often like a guy like Boycell would? Hey, every race, they have new stuff. They start with new engines, new transmission parts. Cost is not the object with a team like this.
Emerson Fittipaldi, and this is not scheduled, Jack Arute.
No, it is not, Paul, and it's a very disappointed crew here because what they've determined is they have exactly the same problem that befell them during qualifying yesterday. Remember, he had to come in and they had to change all of the electrics on the car, and that is what Rick Reineman and the rest of the crew is going to do right now for Emerson Fittipaldi. He is literally out of the chase for the checkered flag, but points so critical for this team, they are going to make an exchange of all the electrics, the batteries included, and try and get him back, even if it's several laps down.
You know, what's really sad about that, Paul, is that often it's not the electrics. They have no choice but to change all of it. Often it's the wiring looms. The wiring looms in these cars today, because of all the electronics available, are very complicated.
Emerson, of course, had been running in 3rd place, which would have consolidated his position in the championship. So this is a major blow for the team and for him personally. The former winner here in Toronto.
Yeah, Emmo, if they can't get that car back in and running in the top positions, at the start of the show we showed you the point distribution. He's going to be out of the points, and that'll be a serious blow to Emerson Fittipaldi's bid for any championship in this season. Michael Andretti still just disappearing from the rest of the field. Only Rahal is able to chase. This is the look in from Lake Ontario at the beautiful downtown of Toronto. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC stations. Bobby Rahal closing up on the back end of Michael Andretti. Michael just picked up that extra point for leading the most laps. as we crossed over the halfway point at this race, and all of a sudden, in the last half lap or so, Bobby Rahal has surged forward and is now in a desperate effort to catch Michael.
Well, you know, it shows us, Paul, that Rahal did have a reserve, that he has been laying back. Now, not loafing. I don't mean that at all, but laying back. The smart driver. Now he's taking a run at Michael.
He's looking back from Scott Goodyear's car, looking right through the suspension. There's Michael as he veers around Scott Goodyear. Rahal will have to handle up the same obstacle if they're going to stay in contact with one another. Michael alone for the moment. Now Rahal around Goodyear.
Yes, and Goodyear moved over and let him go. Goodyear knew that he was being lapped. Now Scott moved up a long way. He was in 8th place the last time I looked, but he realized these guys are fighting for the lead.
As we see Bobby Rahal here, I talked with Carl Hogan, who we've seen a couple of times, of course, so far during this race this morning. And Carl said, I asked him, why is Bobby Rahal so good? And he said, for one thing, he is a great test driver, the best I've ever seen. And Carl Hogan has worked through the years with some really fine drivers. Apparently, he said, Rahal never goes down a blind alley in the development of a car. He senses when something's going to be fruitful and pursues that.
I think that's one of the best advantages, Sam, that any race driver can have, especially in the Indy cars, but it also even works in the stock cars.
And, of course, this team has the budget to do the testing, which is important. Some of the other teams don't.
And it's good to have a partner like Carl Hogan in the operation. He's a long-time racer, really enjoys his racing. Jan Vikas looks like he's struggling there in the 14 car, finally gets it back going. And here comes Stefan Johansson as he locks the brakes and gets together with Scott Brayton.
Lost a wing. You saw his wing got knocked to the ground and he ran over his wing. Lucky if he doesn't have a flat tire from running over it. You watch him locking his front brakes up there. The wing even hurts him a little bit more.
And that is Jimmy Vasser that was moving up alongside, trying to battle with Stefan Johansson.
Johansson's biggest problem was that he didn't have the brake balance set properly. Whenever you have too much on the front's locked up, and then you don't get any braking hardly.
This is a battle for 9th, 10th, and 11th, so these are front-running cars.
Now here's that maneuver again.
And you watch him, he locks up. Johansson locks up his front brakes. He can't stop. Scott Goodyear has to head for the corner. Johansson can't stop, knocks his wing off. And now he's really got a problem running over his own wing.
Jack Arut's right there.
And Paul, you can see they are taking a complete wing section, and they are going to make the exchange on Stefan Johansson's wing area. It's a very simple process. There are two fasteners to the nose part of the car, and those fasteners go on. They lift the wing up, and here is what remains of the former wing. Now you can see it's all carbon fiber. It breaks away quite easily, but you lose this on a track with long straightaways, and you lose valuable handling capabilities on the car.
Jack, it's incredible, isn't it? Here's Paul Tracy.
Paul Tracy with Gary Gerald.
Indeed, Paul, I know it's a great disappointment to be here in front of the hometown fans and the great support. How are you dealing with it and the frustration of a jammed gearbox that just didn't want to free up?
Well, it's disappointing. You know, the Marlboro Racing Team Penske car was handling great. You know, I think we really had a shot at winning this, and I want to thank Rick for letting me drive the car. You know, without him allowing me to have these opportunities, you know, I wouldn't be able to show what I'm able of doing. And you know, I think it was a disappointing day. I'm disappointed inside. The crew's disappointed, but you know, we'll bounce back, and we always do, and we'll be back in Michigan.
We'll see you in a couple of weeks in Michigan. Thanks.
Thanks.
Paul? You know, interesting record for Paul Tracy, especially when you consider that more often than not, as we're looking at Emerson Fittipaldi's come back in once again. Paul Tracy, DNF here. He DNF'd at Indy, Detroit, Toronto. His only finish this year was a good finish, 4th place at Phoenix.
But you know, you have to really call him right now the boy wonder for road racing. These deals on the road circuits have not been his fault. Now, he has a record of 2 cars, maybe they were his fault, but that's part of growing up.
One of the things he told me yesterday was, he said, you know, I think I finally earned the respect of the crew and the confidence of the crew. He knew he didn't have that at first. He was just the new kid on the block testing their car. He hasn't now.
You know, Sam, one of the biggest problems he's going to have in his career right now in the early part is going to be the fact that he's not developed a lot of cars. With Penske, you have to be a development driver. Otherwise, you just don't do good because Penske makes his own cars.
Let's go back to the pits and Jack Arut.
Well, Paul, Bobby Unser was absolutely correct as to what the ongoing problem is with Emerson Fittipaldi. They have tried changing all of this material. That didn't work. Now, that's the singular indication that it's in the wiring harness. So what they've done is they said, Emo, go out, stroke your way around the best you can because this won't solve the problem, and we need to finish for points.
Well, the entire Penske operation really in a development program this year. New engines, newer cars. 8 of their 20 races, when you consider the entire team's numbers, have resulted in not finishing the race. But I'll tell you something else. That's all research as far as Roger Penske is concerned. With every one of those non-finishes, they learn something, and they come back stronger next time. On board with Michael Andretti, Bobby Rahal is second. Al Unser Jr. has now moved up into third place. In fourth, Mario Andretti and Danny Sullivan. We'll be back. And 2 cars coming together, Mario Andretti and Al Unser Jr. coming into the corner under heavy braking. They just touch one another, sending both off and sliding. Mario under power got away, but it doesn't look like little Al has any power at all.
No, I think he's killed his engine. It was a quick spin. He was leading Mario. Here it is right here in the playback.
The 2 cars, Mario closing. This was a nice battle developing for third place.
And Mario just ran right into the back of little Al. Didn't do it intentionally, but he couldn't stop. Spun little Al around. It was unexpected little Al, as far as I started to say, so he lost his engine. The spin hit was so quick. You see that little Al couldn't catch the clutch quick enough, because he's one of these drivers that brakes with his left foot and shifts with his right hand only.
And Mario Andretti heads for pit road. Jack Arut's right there.
Well, Paul, the crew gets their first look at the problems on Mario Andretti's car. The cursory look shows that there doesn't seem to be any damage that could dramatically affect the car. They are going to adjust the wing. The front nose piece is slashed away with giant gashes in it, but he is off and away after changing just 4 tires.
As Paul Newman, one of the car owners, watched, and you can see he was concerned, as was the crew, with the front suspension on that car to make sure that was in good shape. You can see the tire marks on the nose of Mario's car. And they brought out the yellow only in that section of the race course, but that's also one of Bobby Rahal's potential passing sections. So they want to get that turn cleared as fast as they can. That's just a situation, Bobby Unser, is it not, where brake fade changes lap to lap. Not a driver error as much as you just really don't know if you can run that close at this point in the race.
Absolutely. Mario was going to try to attempt to pass on little Al. He was going to try to pass him. Then he found out he couldn't make it. He can't stop anymore because he had a run at him. Little Al had more braking right then, so he tapped him, and little Al obviously didn't expect it, so he got spun out without being able to get his clutch in.
Still, it was at Loudon 2 weeks ago that Mario had a run-in with Rick Mears, went down, apologized to Rick. I feel bad that Mario now has had contact with little Al. That's 2 races in a row. He has had contact with somebody. That isn't going to help his confidence.
So Mario Andretti back in the fight, but losing some positions, dropping down to 5th place and coming off of the leader lap, actually dropping to 4th. Coming off of the leader lap in that contact with Al Unser Jr. and little Al not yet restarted and not back to the fight. Michael Andretti continues to hold about a 2.3-second lead over Bobby Rahal.
See, these cars don't have starters on them, so they have to get a pull, and they can't get a truck out there to give them a pull. They'll only get them off the track.
Next Saturday on ABC Sports, a full day of great championship golf at 2 o'clock Eastern. Top seniors from around the world will converge on the famed Royal Lytham St. Anne's Golf Club for the British Senior Open. And then at 3:30 Eastern, we begin coverage of the Lady Pros in the U.S. Women's Open Golf Championship. That's all next Saturday, right here on ABC Sports. Michael Andretti still holding off a charging Bobby Rahal. From time to time, Rahal's car has been right up on the back end of Michael, and it seems that Bobby Rahal is handling a little bit better. Bobby Unser, is that a product of the fuel load going down in Rahal's car?
Well, it obviously is. Bobby likes a light fuel, or his car likes a light fuel load. But he takes a run up on Michael, who's right there. And you can see Bobby Rahal is back a little bit now. Then he'll ease it off and come back now. He could be doing 2 things, cooling his radiators down and cooling the brakes. He runs up, he tests Michael, and then he backs off a little bit.
And, of course, he's keeping the pressure on Michael throughout. Michael running first, of course. Mario still running 4th. Last year, the Andrettis finished 1st and 2nd. They're now running 1st and 4th.
You know, often a race driver like Michael will be out in front as long as he is. He's led almost all this entire race. And what he'll do is get a little bit lackadaisical. The guy, he slows down, the guy behind him slows down. So they go to it, and all of a sudden the guy behind him, Ray Hall, now runs up on him. Then Michael's got to get her up again. And that's what Ray Hall wants to keep doing to him.
Again, just off to Michael's left on the other side of the wall, another half of the roadway, and then a beautiful lakefront here. Look at this. This is a graph of Michael Andretti's performance this year. Up and down and up and down. And then Bobby Rahal. He doesn't necessarily like the title of Mr. Consistency, but it is a little bit more even. And those first place finishes followed up with the second places. Those have really helped him stay at the top of the points.
He's not only finished good, but he's really been aggressive this year.
Michael, of course, it must be remembered, started the year with an unproven engine, the new Ford Cosworth engine. He took a few races before that was really functioning for him, and had he not lost those points, doubtless this championship would be head-to-head right now instead of having Ray Hall with the big lead.
You saw Emerson Fittipaldi struggling earlier. Finally, they brought the car in, trying to fix it. Apparently, it doesn't work. Right now, he's with Jack.
Well, Paul, despite all of this, he did have the second fastest lap of the race so far, but that's nothing to take home and be excited about, is it, Emma?
Well, Jack, you know, the car was really running strong, and after the first pit stop, I was like 10 seconds behind Michael and started catching down to 6-7 seconds, and very disappointed. We had an electrical problem, I don't know, somewhere on the chassis.
With this type of season that Team Penske is having, how tough is it on the drivers? It's got to be big disappointments week after week.
Well, you know, today we'll be very competitive and we have a good chance of winning. We're running very strong. I'm looking for the next race in Michigan 500, you know, the Marlboro 500 in Michigan. Should be a good race for us and the rest of the season. I mean, just have to go for the next race and go for it.
Paul? We're looking forward to that one, too. You'll see it here on ABC Sports. Roger Penske, both cars out. But Roger does enjoy watching the racing and stays in the pits, keeping track of everybody else. And no doubt keeping track of where he is in the championship standing.
You know, you look at that Roger Penske. His both cars are out of the race, but he's still there living it in his head. That's a real racer.
Michael Andretti in front. Bobby Rahal continues in second as we ride with the young Canadian Scott Goodyear, who in Derek Walker's car has had a brilliant season thus far. This is one of the great champions of the future in IndyCar racing. And Bobby Rahal's team, a moment ago, signaled that they were prepared to have Bobby Rahal come into the pits. Michael continues out, coming up behind Stefan Johansson. There is the crew waiting for Bobby Rahal's appearance on pit road.
They'll have to watch when he comes in. Bobby's falling back a little further than he likes to fall back right now. And it could be that they have a problem. Here he comes in, now we'll watch and see.
So Bobby Rahal now on pit road. Gary Gerald waits for him.
We watch, and here he comes, Paul. He slides right in beautifully like a veteran driver. Doesn't have to lock anything up. First stop today, 14 seconds. Then there was controversy on the exit as he pitted at the same time as Michael Andretti. This time, Michael's still on course. Rahal has got his load of fuel. They disengage the hoses. 12.3 seconds on our clock, and a great clean stop for this team.
Oh, what a nice pit stop. Danny Sullivan makes a stop at the same time.
Boy, and you can tell there was nothing wrong with Ray Hall's car because he did literally no adjustment. He didn't want any. A very fast pit stop.
You see Mario Andretti now right up behind Rahal. This will come out as a battle for position with Mario right up behind there.
But, of course, only momentarily for position because Mario has a stop coming up.
Exactly, as we cycle through what should be the final stop of this race. Originally a question mark, 2 or 3 stop race, but with the long yellow, it looks like a 2. Here is Michael Andretti in Jackaroo.
And, Paul, they are calling it once again for no changes on the car. They're going to exchange all 4 tires. The most critical point right now, they're concerned, taking on all the fuel they possibly can get because they intend not to come back. In fact, there is only approximately 3 gallons of fuel left in the tank as he goes out.
Well, the main thing is they both have full loads, so we're working ourselves in for a real good finish right now.
And I'll tell you what, the Newman Haas crew has nothing to be ashamed of in that stop either. Both of those have been absolute practices of ballet, total coordination, as both Rahal and Michael Andretti make their stops. But will it be quick enough for Bobby Rahal? And will he be able to find his way back in contact? You saw, just got a glimpse of it behind Michael there, about a straightaway back. So now we're set for a spectacular finish with the pit stops complete in the Molson Indy at Toronto. On Toronto, the CN Tower there over to your right, and here's the way they line up. Not much change at the front of the order. Michael Andretti followed by Bobby Rahal. Danny Sullivan is just a few feet off of being on the leader lap. Then Mario Andretti is behind him, and Eddie Cheever runs down in 5th place. Now Scott Goodyear is circling this track, currently running in 7th. Remember his great run in the Indy 500. Now, after that incredibly close finish behind Al Unser Jr., we asked the Canadian Scott Goodyear about his team's mental toughness.
I think you have to be tough mentally. There's no doubt in this business. And, you know, when you get to taste it a little bit, boy, you want it even worse. And I've been chomping at it, you know, especially this year as I can feel the momentum building in the team, and it's all coming along, and we're going in a good direction. And I guess I underline the word momentum because you have to be able to continue off. You've had one good success. You have to make sure you can continue on that, just not fall on your face. And I think our team has been able to carry on that.
Well, Scott Goodyear, though he's very disappointed personally with the way he's performed here, he's been struggling with this car throughout the weekend. I saw him coming out of the garage area. They have an indoor garage area here where all the transporters, the big semis, pull in. And it's really a wonderful area for them to work on the cars. And he just really was concerned he wasn't doing as good as he wanted to in front of this Canadian crowd.
Well, you know, that's true, Paul. But ever since Jim O'Donnell with McKenzie and Derek Walker have teamed up, this team has really been looking good. Right there, Scott Goodyear. So that really makes a giant difference of how you put good people together.
One of my new favorite shots, the out through the rear suspension of Scott Goodyear's car.
Yeah, you mentioned Derek Walker, of course, being the crew chief now for Scott Goodyear, who you see here. Derek Walker, multi-time Indy winner when he was Roger Penske's crew chief. And when you have that kind of talent, that kind of history in your team, it's easy to have the kind of confidence that Scott Goodyear was talking about, the way they build on it.
And his chief mechanic, Laurie Garish, another guy, he was my chief mechanic in 1981. Been with Derek Walker for a long time, was with Penske for a long time.
As long as we're watching Scott talking about Derek Walker is one of the new smaller board members in this whole new organizational plan they put together for a year trial to try to bring all of IndyCar racing back in focus and back together. Derek Walker is one of them, Carl Haas, Roger Penske, Jim Hall, and Dale Coyne. So that's a nice cross-representation of IndyCars. And then, of course, non-voting members, the chairman of CART, Bill Stokan, and the president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Tony George. Let's go pit side with Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, if all things go according to plan, we won't see Michael Andretti again, because when you bang his fuel tank, it's bone dry. Now here is the hose that runs out of the tank down to the filler nozzle. This is 1 gallon. This would be 2 gallons up here. He has exactly 1.5 gallons left. The telemetry tells them that they can now run consuming fuel at 1.4 miles to the gallon. So they feel they can go flat out the rest of the way. They've turned the boost up, and they hope that Bobby Rahal cannot catch them. For more on that, let's check in with Gary Gerald.
Jack, it's almost an identical story here. Carl Hogan watches with foot on the pit wall along with the crew. They have a little more fuel left than Michael. 4 gallons left in the hose here, but they can turn the wick up. This is a showdown to the finish. They don't expect to see Rahal in the pits again until the checkered flag.
And what impact thus far has this race had on the entire points fight that goes on season long and ends up with the awarding of the PPG Cup at the end of the season? Well, of course, Bobby Rahal came into this race the points leader. Well, if they stay the way they are, he'll leave the points leader. That can't be taken away from him. But Michael Andretti will close to within 34 points. So he's gained 5 points overall. That is if they finish in this current fashion. Now, Al Unser Jr., after his spinoff, is back in the running, but currently out of the points. So some of the other contenders, Little Al, Emerson Fittipaldi, Al Unser Jr., they have all had their problems here today, and they all have the potential of finishing out of the points, and that's going to open up that battle.
Of course, what Michael Andretti really needs is to have Bobby Rahal fall out of one of these races. There are 7 races left in the championship.
We look at the race summary after 81 laps. Michael Andretti leading all the way. Will he go all the way to the checkered flag? 1 caution. That when Eric Bachelard got into the wall, these are the cars out of the race. Fortunately, Eric walks away from his machine. Scott Pruitt had damage to the front of his car. Ted Trappist with an engine letting go. And Raul Boisel, Paul Tracy with gearbox problems. Zalmi, Fittipaldi, you've seen his problem. Jan Beekes finally retires A.J. Foyt's car, and Scott Brayton with damage comes out of this race. So on board now with Danny Sullivan. Sullivan runs in third place, but he is not running on the leader lap. Once again, as we have seen before this year, the only two cars on the leader lap are Michael Andretti and Bobby Rahal as they continue to drive away from the rest of the field. So the fight continues in Toronto. We'll be back after this message and a word from your ABC station. Miles from here at Exhibition Place, Queen's Park, and the Parliament Building. Some magnificent architecture here in Toronto. It is a most beautiful city. And the action continues over at Exhibition Place. On Lakeshore, Michael Andretti continues the lead, closing up behind Stefan Johansson, trying to put these cars yet another lap down. And Bobby Rahal has fallen back a bit. He's now 4.5 seconds behind Michael, but having to handle up some traffic. Michael, well, he gets through it pretty quickly, so it will not be a factor to Michael in terms of slowing him down and allowing Bobby Rahal to catch up.
Traffic's really important right now. Michael's led all of this race, but the biggest problem that he has is traffic. Any one of these guys with his teammates so close on each side could cause Michael to clip the wall. So he has to be careful and watch for Bobby Rahal taking a run at him at the same time.
88 laps are now complete, 103 laps, the scheduled distance, and this the 7th annual Molson Indy Toronto. Gigantic crowd here, beautiful day, nice sky overhead, and I'll tell you something, Bobby Unser and Sam, these Canadian race fans love their racing. They come out, they love to watch anything, and this is a race-filled weekend.
You don't see any of them leaving before the race is over. These people, the Canadians up here, just plain love racing, like you said.
And you know, there are two young drivers that they justifiably are so proud of, have performed today exactly as one might have expected. Paul Tracy going off like a rocket almost, showing incredible skill and speed. And Scott Goodyear showing the kind of consistency that has earmarked his season so far this year.
As we keep an eye on Bobby Rahal in second place, he and the Rahal-Hogan team continue to lead both in points and in prize money earned in this year's Texaco Haviland pit stop competition. However, Scott Goodyear and his Walker Motorsports team have now moved into second place in that competition after proving that a great pit stop strategy is an important part of every IndyCar event. While his competitors visited pit lane at least 3 times at the Milwaukee 200, Goodyear needed only 2 pit stops on his way to spending the least amount of time in the pits during the race, and that moved him up in the points. So that competition continues as well. Michael Andretti, the Kmart car number 1, looking solid, pulling out from Bobby Rahal, who is still a good 4 seconds back. But remember, so many times this year, Michael Andretti has been leading toward the closing laps, but doesn't finish the race. Michael Andretti starting third, now first.
But you know, he's
the driver somewhere.
But you know, Paul, he is really being careful today. Now, he's had problems even like in Indianapolis when he's been careful, but he's really been careful today. He's taken a lot of time to pass the cars. His buddy Lazier right in front of him. He's really doing everything he can not to have a confrontation with another car.
Well, he's running about a mile an hour only per lap off of his fastest lap, though. So the smoothness that we're noticing from him here is not really slowing him down a great deal, which is interesting.
Average speed of the race coming up a bit. Don't forget, in 2 weeks, all these cars move from a temporary road circuit here to the super speedway at Michigan for the Michigan 500. 500 hard-fought miles. That is always a spectacular race. Don't miss that one. Average speed right now, 96.9 miles an hour. So Michael Andretti is closing on his old record set last year at 99.1. Will Michael be able to get past that? Well, he's on his way right now. Bobby Rahal still trying to catch up, has closed the gap by about half a second. But Michael Andretti is looking solid. And the harbor front here at Toronto, Canada on a beautiful day. And over at Exhibition Place, the race cars continue to battle with one another as Michael Andretti pulls a little bit ahead and then, unfortunately, falls back closer to the clutches of Bobby Rahal. You see Bobby Rahal as he comes off that corner. Now watch. Get a glimpse of him. There is Bobby Rahal as he is once again closing in and is now only 2.5 seconds back.
Well, Rahal has no choice. It's a points race. It's a championship they're going after, and he's pulling everything out he can pull out. He's got to rev the engine as tight as it'll go, use all the fuel that is necessary, do all the braking that he can do, because there's only 10 laps left.
Just 10 laps to go, and remember that Bobby Rahall's car tends to handle better when it's lighter. So the story should tell here shortly as Rahal definitely in hot pursuit. Now what about Michael Andretti? Will he have an opportunity to maybe lead flag to flag for the second year in a row here? Jack Arute, what do you think?
Well, Paul, that seems to be his goal right now. In fact, the crew has radioed to him that they are not at all concerned about fuel. They have radioed for him to go to +4 on the fuel setting. So even though they only have a gallon and a half, they have no intentions of bringing him back in, nor are they going to play this conservatively. Now, you've got to remember that his chief counterpart in the chase for the championship is directly behind him. So if you want to use up a competitor's car, try to keep the pace as hot and as fast as you possibly can. Run the competition out of fuel, and maybe you can gain some more points. Let's check in with Gary Gerald.
Well, Carl Hogan is here watching Bobby Rahal. What are your chances of catching Michael Andretti?
Well, under all the circumstances right now, not very well.
Any major concerns?
Well, we may have one.
You got to tell us about it.
Not right now.
All right. There's one concern. Now, let me ask about that incident with the officials earlier. Will you file a protest?
Well, we're going to talk to him for. We're going to talk to him for sure. I don't know if we'll file a protest. We're going to talk to them, see what they have to say.
All right. There is a concern. We don't know what it is. Maybe we'll find out, Paul.
Well, I think that at very least, Carl Hogan wants to get a different view. Remember, he had a ground-level view of the whole thing. I think he wants to see what the other officials are saying before he passes any harsh judgments on them.
That Carl Hogan's about the nicest man you could ever meet, but again, like you said, Paul, he can't see everything. And as far as the protest at the start, I've never seen one of those things be valid in my life at motor racing, so it won't happen here with that. But Bobby Rahal's run as hard as he could. Michael's running hard at times. Rahal seems faster than Michael, but he can't get around it.
You know what I like about Hogan, though? He doesn't mask it all. What you get is what he is. He loves the sport. He's intensely involved in it. He gets happy. He gets angry. We need a little bit more of that.
Can't you imagine having him for a partner in any business? That's got to be a dream come true.
Only when you're winning. I got a feeling if you're not doing well, you can be a bear. Michael out in front now, 3.6 seconds. So Rahal has dropped back a bit. We ride with third place Danny Sullivan, who is off the lead lap. He is being pursued by Mario Andretti, Eddie Cheever, John Andretti, Scott Goodyear, Al Unser Jr., Robbie Gordon, and Brian Till. And on Bobby Rahal's situation, Gary, you have more.
Well, Carl Hogan was being mysterious with us, but then he said you might want to stick around, and we see indications that this team may be anticipating a late race stop by Rahal. If in fact that's the case, that would of course seemingly destroy any chance to win. He's got to be worried about trying to protect second place in the standings. We wait with them, and we'll see this mystery resolved shortly, I think.
Now if that happens, Paul, it means that they did a timed stop, which I don't think, if they did that, was a very good thing to be doing. Rahal was behind him trying to gain.
You mean a time stop the last time they were in?
The time stop the last time they were in. And it just doesn't make sense that Jim McGee would allow that to happen in the team.
Bobby, do you think the thought there was to try to get ahead of Michael, even if it was only briefly, and see if that would change the chemistry of the race?
Yes, and that was for certain sure, and it almost did, because we saw almost a bad confrontation coming out of the pit. But nonetheless, it isn't a good thing to do. You have to go to the end.
So Michael Andretti runs in front, and Bobby Rahal is in second. But he still may have more problems. Rahal may have to hit the pits. We'll be back. Place, trying desperately to catch Michael Andretti, who is 3.5 seconds ahead. But Rahal may be driving with yet another problem. His crew has been out over the wall with fuel hoses in hand. Perhaps they will bring Rahal in to refuel, and there goes Bobby Rahal into the pits. Will this make a difference for Danny Sullivan, who is a full lap back? Gary Gerald is there as Bobby Rahal rolls in.
The mystery being resolved, but remember there's only 4 gallons here, but of course the time it takes to slow down and to get back to speed is what's so costly. He's got the fuel, he's gone. Now the question is, can he hang on to second place?
4 seconds in and out. There is Danny Sullivan as Danny Sullivan comes in past the Princess Gate and alongside of Bobby Rahal. Bobby Rahal gets a nose in front of him.
Boy, that was a close deal. I'll bet you Danny Sullivan didn't even know that he was in the pits, and he's thinking, my Lord, why is Bobby Rahal coming out of the pits right now?
Now, let's not forget that while they are in close proximity on the course, Danny Sullivan is being scored as a full lap down, while Bobby Rahal is on the leader lap trying to chase Michael. Bobby Rahal, the only one on the leader lap with Michael.
Well, that would mean that Danny Sullivan, down a full lap, would have had to pass him and go around another lap because Michael is still leading the race. Just so everybody knows, Danny, we got too excited about it, didn't have a factor in this.
Not look great, though.
It did look good. I mean, it really looked good. I got excited.
Fortunately, here in the booth throughout the year, we have the service of the Fran and John Leonard, Greg Felden, Bob Coles, all helping keep us honest on the scoring, and Greg especially with a historical fact. So we watch those. I'll tell you what, anytime you get two of these cars side by side, I love it.
I'll guarantee you Rick Gallis would have been happy if that would have been the way it was.
This has been an excellent day for Rick Gallis and his team, though, with both Little Al earlier on before he was involved in that unfortunate thing with Mario. He was running third, and now, of course, Danny Sullivan looks set to claim third place. Both cars have run very well mechanically all day.
99 laps complete as Paul Newman watches his car, Michael Andretti, averaging about 105 miles an hour with each lap. The average speed of the race at 97.6. He's just got a few laps. He may actually close on his old record with now 4 laps to go.
Did you ever notice what a poker face Paul Newman has during the race being a car owner? Boy, it's nothing like being an actor, I promise.
Well, it's something that he can't control, too, and that he's not accustomed to that kind of position when you think about it. Very competent race driver. When he's an actor, he is one of the superstars. He's really in charge of the whole set he works with. Here, all he can do is cross his arms and hope that Michael does a fine job.
And he takes his racing so serious, and that's what you see when you see his face. Such a nice person.
A long time ago, I asked Paul if he had found racing before acting, where would he be now? He said, I'd be in the cockpit of a race car.
Right. The interesting thing here, of course, is that this is exactly the kind of day, you see Paul there, that Michael Andretti so desperately needs. He has to chip away at Rahal. He has to try to get Rahal on the defensive. Paul knows as well as anybody else that a victory here today is a victory in its own right, but the championship is still way out of their grasp, not out of their grasp, but it's still going to take a lot of work to get where they were last year, which was closing aggressively on Rahal as the season progressed.
Michael led every lap here last year. Will he lead every lap here this year? Now 101 laps complete as Eddie Cheever's target car rolls over to the side. Obviously power off.
I think that's Robbie Gordon's
That's Robbie Gordon.
Eddie's still running.
And I heard that thing when it came by. Boy, it sounded like it blew an engine because it really made bad sounds. It went right by our booth here.
Yeah, I think Eddie Cheever is still running 6th, but neither of those cars has run really well today.
You know, they've got one of the best engineers, Mo Nunn, on that team that does these cars, and usually Mo is really good on these road circuits. Neither one of his cars, like you said, Sam, were doing very good today.
Jeez, I was wrong there. It was Eddie Cheever's car that stopped. My mistake.
Pulled over by the edge.
Yep.
Now there's Rahal with that stop running a full 19.5 seconds back of Michael Andretti and Nick Finaro with the white flag. One more lap to go. 1.78 miles for Michael Andretti. And it's a time that you traditionally refer to the worries of the race driver. Bobby, truly on this lap, is it a difficult run?
Oh, it certainly is, and especially with Michael. Think of all the bad luck he's had, almost winning some races this year and dropping out. So, boy, I'll tell you what, he shifts it easy, he turns it easy, watches the traffic easy, definitely doesn't turn much RPM.
So Michael Andretti now totally without challenge on the final lap.
And, of course, what a relief mentally for him that Rahal had to make that pit stop. That has basically allowed him to enjoy these last couple of laps, which he would not have been able to do with Bobby Rahal in his mirrors. It's rare that a driver gets a chance to savor a win coming up, and I think Michael is able to do that right this minute.
And Michael Andretti heads for the checkered flag. No one else in contest on this field. As we come to the closing lap, Michael Andretti makes the final turn onto the pit straight. And the Kmart Lola has taken the win here in Toronto. And another victory for the Ford engine. And 25 victories now go into the record book for Michael Andretti. Newman and